The grand hall of Harmony Point Station sparkled with lights from 1,000 different worlds. Delegates from across the galaxy gathered for the annual Peace Summit, their voices mixing into a strange melody of clicks, hums, and spoken words. Some walked on 2 legs, others on 4 or 6. Some had scales, some had fur, and some had skin that glowed in the dark. Princess Vera stood near the entrance, watching the crowd. She was used to this moment, the moment when everyone noticed her. She was 9 feet tall, with deep red skin that seemed to glow from within. Heat radiated from her body like a furnace. Her people, the Kethrans, came from a planet of volcanoes and lava rivers. They were built for extreme heat and harsh conditions. Vera's body temperature would burn most species if they got too close. Her muscles could crush steel. Her tail, thick and powerful, swayed behind her as she walked. This was her 4th summit. She knew what would happen next. As she stepped into the hall, conversations stopped. Delegates turned to look, then quickly looked away. Some found sudden interest in their drinks. Others discovered urgent business on the other side of the room. A path cleared before her, not out of respect, but out of fear. Vara walked to the refreshment area, trying to ignore the whispers. Too big, too dangerous, too hot. She had heard it all before. On her homeworld, males were forbidden from approaching royalty without years of formal challenges and tests. Here, among the other species, males avoided her for different reasons. They saw her size and strength and decided she was too much trouble. She reached for a glass of water, but her tail accidentally bumped the table. The whole thing shook. Glasses crashed to the floor, shattering into pieces. The entire hall went silent. Every eye turned to her. Vara felt her face grow hotter, though no one could tell. She started to bend down to clean up the mess, already knowing how this would go. Someone would rush over to help, nervously, carefully, treating her like a dangerous animal that might attack at any moment. "Don't worry, those tables are way too small anyway." The voice came from beside her. A human male, shorter than most other species in the room, was already kneeling down to pick up the broken glass. He wore the uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps with bars on his shoulder that marked him as a lieutenant. "Whoever designed this place clearly never met anyone over 6 feet, he continued, grinning up at her. "I bump into stuff all the time, and I'm practically a hobbit compared to you." Vera stared at him. He was picking up the glass with his bare hands, completely unbothered by the heat coming from her body. Most species would be sweating by now, standing this close to her. This human just smiled and kept working. "I'm Jake," he said, standing up with a handful of glass pieces. "Jake Martinez. Just got assigned here last week. Still figuring out where everything is." "I am Princess Vera," she said automatically. "Of the Kethran Empire." "Cool. Nice to meet you, Your Highness." Jake dumped the glass into a waste container and dusted off his hands. "So, is the food here any good, or should I have eaten before coming?" Vera blinked. He was asking her about food, just like that. No formal bow, no nervous stammering, no quick excuse to leave. He stood there waiting for her answer like they were old friends chatting. "The food is acceptable," she managed to say, "though most species find the Kethran dishes too spicy." "Too spicy?" Jake's eyes lit up. "That sounds like a challenge. My grandmother made salsa that could peel paint off walls. I've been training for this my whole life." Before Vara could respond, Jake was already heading toward the food tables. He looked back at her. "You coming? I need an expert to tell me which one will make me regret my life choices." For the first time in 3 years of attending these summits, someone was inviting her to do something. Not carefully, not formally, just casually, like it was the most normal thing in the world. Vara followed him to the food table. Jake piled his plate high with dishes from different worlds, including several Kethran options that were marked with warning labels. He took a bite of fire root curry, a dish that most species couldn't even smell without their eyes watering. Jake chewed thoughtfully. Okay, that's got some kick, but I've had worse. What else you got? They spent the next hour at the food table. Vera found herself actually talking, not just giving formal responses. Jake asked questions about her world, her culture, her opinions on the summit's agenda. He disagreed with her on some points, but in a friendly way, like he was genuinely interested in the debate rather than afraid of offending her. Other delegates watched in confusion, the human and the princess, talking and laughing like normal people. It didn't make sense by any known social rules. When the opening ceremony finally began, Jake sat down at the table next to Vera's. Most tables had 6 seats. Vera's usually had just her, sitting alone while others crowded at different tables. Tonight, Jake was there, along with 3 other humans who followed his lead. The view's better from this side of the room, Jake explained to his colleagues, though Vera suspected that wasn't the real reason. As the speeches began, Vera glanced at the human beside her. He was small by her standards, barely reaching her chest if they stood together. His skin was brown and smooth, radiating no heat at all. By all the social rules she knew, he should have been terrified of her. Instead, he had grinned at her, helped her, talked to her like a person. Vera didn't understand humans yet, but for the first time in years, she felt something she had almost forgotten. Hope that maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to be alone anymore. The summit had just begun, and already everything felt different. The next morning, Vera attended the first negotiation session. She sat at the Kethrin delegation table, surrounded by her advisors and guards. The room was arranged in a circle, with each species having their own section. Humans had a small table near the front, being new members of the Galactic Coalition. Vera tried to focus on the discussion about trade routes, but her mind kept wandering to the previous night. The human, Jake, had treated her so differently from everyone else. She wondered if it was just a one-time thing, a moment of unusual bravery that would fade in the daylight. When the session broke for lunch, she got her answer. "Hey, Vera!" Jake waved at her from across the room. He walked over, carrying 2 lunch containers. "I grabbed an extra meal from the human section. Figured you might want to try actual Earth food instead of the bland stuff they're serving in the main hall." Her advisors stiffened. One of them, an older Kethrin named Zek, stepped forward. "Lieutenant, the princess has a schedule. She cannot simply—" "It's fine, Zek," Vera said quietly. She took the container from Jake. "I will join the lieutenant for lunch. Continue the preparation for the afternoon session without me." Zek looked like he wanted to argue, but he bowed instead. Vera followed Jake to a small observation deck that overlooked the station's central garden. They sat on a bench that creaked under Vera's weight. "Sorry if I caused trouble with your people," Jake said, opening his container. "I just thought you might want a break from all the formal stuff." "You did not cause trouble," Vera said. She opened her container and found something wrapped in flat bread, filled with meat, vegetables, and a red sauce. "What is this?" "Burrito. It's got beef, rice, beans, peppers, and hot sauce. I asked them to make it extra spicy since you said you like heat." Jake took a big bite of his own lunch. "Fair warning, it's messy. Just roll with it." Vera bit into the burrito. Flavors exploded in her mouth. The spice was good, not as hot as Kethrin food, but complex and interesting. Juice dripped down her chin. She quickly wiped it away, feeling embarrassed. Jake laughed. "See? Messy. But good, right?" "Very good," Vera admitted. "Your people make interesting food." They ate in comfortable silence for a while. Then Jake asked, "So, what's it actually like being a princess? I mean, beyond all the formal stuff. Do you get any time to just be yourself?" Vera considered the question. No one had ever asked her that before. "Not often. I have duties, responsibilities. My people expect me to be strong, to be perfect. I represent the entire Kethran Empire wherever I go. That sounds exhausting. It is. The words came out before Vara could stop them. Every moment I must be careful. I must watch my strength so I do not break things. I must control my temperature so I do not burn others. I must speak carefully so I do not offend, and I must always be alone because that is what my position demands. Jake frowned. That's a lot of pressure. Back on Earth, we have important people too, leaders and presidents and whatever. But we don't expect them to be alone. Everyone needs friends. People they can relax with. Doesn't matter how important you are. It is different for Kethrans, Vara explained. Our culture values strength above all. Males must prove themselves worthy through trials before they can even speak to females of high rank. It takes years. No one has ever completed the trials for me. And here, among other species, they fear me. So I remain alone. Well, that's dumb, Jake said bluntly. Vara's head snapped toward him. What? I said it's dumb. Not you, the situation. Look, I get that traditions are important, but a tradition that makes people lonely? That seems like a bad tradition. Jake shrugged. Maybe I don't understand Kethran culture, but from where I'm sitting, you're smart, interesting, and pretty fun to hang out with. Anyone who can't see that because they're scared of your height or your temperature, that's their loss, not yours. Vara felt something warm in her chest that had nothing to do with her body temperature. You truly are not afraid of me? Nope. Should I be? Most are. Most people are scared of lots of things that aren't actually dangerous. Jake finished his burrito and crumpled up the wrapper. Humans learned a long time ago that size doesn't equal threat. Some of the most dangerous things on Earth are tiny: poison frogs, spiders, viruses, and some of the biggest things are gentle. We judge by actions, not appearance. Over the next few days, Jake kept showing up. He sat with Vara at meals, asked her opinions during breaks, and walked with her through the station's gardens. He introduced her to other humans, who followed his lead and treated her normally. They argued with her about politics, laughed at her jokes, and included her in their conversations. Vara found herself looking forward to these moments. She started seeking Jake out, asking him questions about Earth and human culture. She learned that humans came from a dangerous world filled with extreme temperatures, deadly animals, and harsh weather. They evolved to handle almost anything. Fear of larger creatures wasn't built into them like it was for other species. We're pack animals, Jake explained one evening as they watched ships dock through an observation window. We work together, no matter the size difference. My squad back on Earth had people from 5 feet to 6'8". Didn't matter. What mattered was trust. You trust easily, Vara observed. Not really. But I trust you. You've had plenty of chances to hurt people and you haven't. You're careful, controlled. That's someone I can trust. Vara turned to look at him. In the dim light from the docking bay, Jake's face was relaxed, honest. He meant every word. This strange, small human trusted her, believed in her, saw her as more than just a dangerous princess. Thank you, she said softly, for treating me like a person, not a title. Not a threat, just a person. Jake smiled that same easy grin from the first night. That's all you've ever been, Vara. Just took someone pointing it out. As they stood there together, Vara realized something was changing inside her, something she had never expected to feel. She was starting to care about this human deeply and personally, and the thought both excited and terrified her. Because caring meant vulnerability, and vulnerability meant risk. And for a princess who had learned to protect herself by staying distant, these new feelings were the most dangerous thing she had ever faced. But as she watched Jake laugh at something happening in the docking bay, Vara decided that maybe, just maybe, some dangers were worth facing. The summit had been going well for 10 days. Treaties were being signed, agreements were being reached, and for the first time in Coalition history, real progress was being made. But not everyone wanted peace. Jake couldn't sleep that night. He often had trouble sleeping in new places, and the station's artificial day-night cycle was still throwing off his internal clock. He decided to take a walk through the quieter sections of the station, areas where fewer delegates wandered. The corridor was dimly lit for night cycle. Jake's footsteps echoed softly on the metal floor. He was thinking about Vera, about how much he enjoyed spending time with her, when he heard voices ahead. Low voices, speaking in Vorgash. Jake had learned basic Vorgash during his diplomatic training. The words made his blood run cold. Charges are set in sections 4 and 7. When they explode, it will look like Catherine sabotage. The princess will be blamed. The treaty will collapse. War will resume. Jake pressed himself against the wall, trying to stay quiet. He needed to get to a security panel, trigger an alarm. He started backing away slowly, but his boot scraped against the floor. The voices stopped. "Someone's there!" 3 Vorgash soldiers came around the corner. They were large, muscular creatures with gray skin and 4 arms. Each one carried weapons that were definitely not allowed at a peace summit. They saw Jake and raised their guns. Jake's hand slammed against the emergency alarm on the wall. Red lights started flashing, and a loud siren began wailing through the section. The Vorgash soldiers snarled and advanced on him. "You just made a big mistake, human," the leader growled. Jake raised his hands, but kept his body loose, ready to move. "Actually, I'm pretty sure you guys made the mistake. Planting bombs at a peace summit? That's going to look really bad on your performance reviews." The leader backhanded Jake, sending him crashing into the wall. Pain exploded across his face, and he felt something warm drip down from above his eye. Blood. But Jake had been hit harder during hand-to-hand combat training. He stayed on his feet. "You should have run, little human," another soldier said, moving to block the corridor. They had him surrounded now, backed into a corner. "Now you'll die with your precious princess when our plan succeeds." 3 against 1, Jake said, wiping blood from his eye. "You know, on Earth, it usually takes at least 5 guys to make me nervous. 3 is just insulting." The Vorgash soldiers moved forward. Jake prepared for what would likely be a very short fight. Then a roar echoed through the corridor. The temperature in the hallway suddenly spiked. Vara came around the corner like a force of nature, her red skin blazing with heat, her eyes locked on the Vorgash soldiers. She had heard the alarm from her quarters and recognized the sector. The sector where Jake liked to walk. "Step away from him," she said, her voice deadly calm. The Vorgash leader laughed. "The princess. Perfect. We'll kill you both, detonate the bombs, and blame it all on a power struggle within the Catherine delegation. 2 problems solved." They attacked. What happened next became a story told throughout the station for years to come. Vara moved with impossible speed, her tail whipping out to knock one soldier's legs out from under him. Her fist connected with another's chest, the impact echoing like thunder. But she was also strategic, watching Jake's position, making sure he had room to move. Jake wasn't useless either. He might not have Vara's strength, but he was trained in human combat techniques. He went low while Vara went high, targeting joints and pressure points. When one Vorgash tried to shoot him, Vara's tail knocked the gun away. When another tried to grab Vara from behind, Jake threw a piece of broken pipe at its head. "Stop holding back," Jake shouted as he dodged a punch. "Show them what you can really do." Something changed in Vara's eyes. Her whole life, she had made herself smaller, weaker, less threatening. She had pulled her punches and controlled her strength to make others comfortable. But Jake was right. This wasn't the time for comfort. Vara unleashed her full power. She moved like lightning, struck like an earthquake. Her body temperature rose until the air around her shimmered with heat. One Vorgash soldier tried to grab her and yanked his hand back with a yelp. His palm burned. Another swung at her face, and she caught his fist in her hand. stopping the punch cold before twisting his arm behind his back. Jake worked alongside her, reading her movements, covering her blind spots. They fought back to back, and for the first time in her life, Vera had a true partner. Someone who didn't fear her strength but complemented it. Someone who trusted her completely. The lead Vorgash soldier made a desperate lunge for a control panel, trying to detonate the bombs early. Jake and Vera moved together, Jake sliding low to trip him while Vera's fist came down on the back of his head. The soldier crashed to the floor, unconscious. The other two soldiers surrendered, raising their hands as station security finally arrived. The security chief, a four-armed Zentari named Cole, stared at the scene. 3 Vorgash soldiers down, a human and a Kethran princess standing together, both breathing hard but victorious. "The bombs," Jake gasped. "Sections 4 and 7. They're planning to frame the Kethrans, break the peace treaty." Cole immediately called for bomb disposal teams. Within minutes, the charges were found and deactivated. The conspiracy was exposed. The 3 Vorgash soldiers, along with several accomplices, were arrested. As the medics checked Jake's injuries, Vera stood beside him. Her hand hovered near his shoulder, wanting to touch him, but afraid of burning him with her heat. "You can touch me," Jake said, noticing her hesitation. "I don't burn that easily." Vera carefully placed her hand on his shoulder. It was warm, but Jake didn't flinch. He smiled up at her. "That was amazing," he said. "You were amazing. Did you see how we worked together? Like we'd been partners for years." Vera looked at her hand on his shoulder, at this brave, crazy human who had stood against armed soldiers without hesitation, who had yelled at her to stop holding back, who had fought beside her like an equal. "You are incredible," she said softly. "Foolish, but incredible. You could have been killed." "So could you," Jake pointed out. "But we weren't, because we had each other's backs. That's what partners do." Partners. The word settled into Vera's heart and made itself at home. She had spent her whole life being protected, isolated, kept separate from others, but tonight she and Jake had been true partners, equals in every way that mattered. As the medics finished treating Jake's cut and security led the prisoners away, Vera made a decision. She was tired of being alone. Tired of following rules that kept her isolated. This human had shown her a different way to live, and she wasn't going to let him go. The morning after the attack, everything changed. News of the thwarted bombing spread through the station like wildfire. Princess Vara and Lieutenant Jake Martinez, the unlikely pair who had stopped a conspiracy and saved the peace summit. The story grew with each telling, but the core truth remained the same. A Kethran princess and a human officer had fought side by side and won. Delegates who had previously avoided Vara now approached her during breaks, not with fear, but with respect. They asked about the fight, about how she and Jake had coordinated so perfectly. They saw the recordings from security cameras and watched in amazement at her skill and control. But more importantly, they saw how she interacted with Jake, laughing, arguing, working together as equals. They saw a male who wasn't intimidated and a princess who wasn't performing weakness for anyone's comfort. The Centauri ambassador, who had never spoken more than 3 formal words to Vara, sat down next to her at lunch. "I must apologize, Princess. I let fear guide my actions. Your people's reputation for strength made me forget to look for the person behind the power." Similar apologies came from others. The Draxian delegate asked her opinion on military strategy. The Pelian representative invited her to a cultural exchange dinner. Slowly, carefully, other species began to see Vera differently. Jake watched it all happen with quiet satisfaction. "See? Once people got past their own issues, they realized what I already knew. You're pretty great." But for Vera, the biggest change wasn't how others saw her, it was how she saw herself. 3 days after the attack, She found Jake on the same observation deck where they had shared lunch. He was alone, looking out at the stars. His face still had a small bandage over his left eyebrow where the Vorgash soldier had hit him. "May I join you?" she asked. Jake turned and smiled. "Always. I was just thinking about home, actually. Earth, my family." Vera sat beside him, the bench groaning under her weight. "Do you miss them?" "Yeah. My mom makes these empanadas that are amazing. And my dad tells the worst jokes you've ever heard. But somehow they're still funny." Jake's smile turned softer. "I have 2 older sisters. They used to beat me up when we were kids, but they also taught me to stand up for myself. To not back down just because someone's bigger or stronger than me." "They sound wonderful," Vera said. "They are. They'd like you, actually. Laura, my oldest sister, she's a lot like you. Strong, smart, refuses to make herself smaller for anyone. She's a commander in the Earth Defense Force now." Jake looked at Vera. "She taught me that strength isn't scary. It's what you do with it that matters." Vera was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I want to tell you something. About my world. About my life." "I'm listening." "On Kethrin, strength is everything. But for females, especially royalty, strength must be controlled, hidden. We are powerful, but we must not show it too openly or we frighten potential mates. We must wait for males to complete trials, to prove themselves, before we can even consider companionship. I have been waiting for 10 years. No one has completed the trials. No one has even tried." Vara's voice grew quieter. "I am 28 years old, and I have never had a friend. Not a real one. My guards, my advisors, they serve me. They do not know me. Other species fear me. My own people's males will not approach me. I have been lonely for so long that I forgot what it felt like to not be alone." She turned to face Jake directly. "Then you arrived. You spoke to me like I was a person. Not a princess, not a threat, not a trophy to be won through combat. Just a person. You made me laugh. You challenged my ideas. You fought beside me without hesitation. And for the first time in my life, I feel like someone truly sees me." Jake reached out and took her hand. Her skin was hot to the touch, but he didn't pull away. "I do see you, Vara. And I like what I see. A lot." "Your hand," Vera said, worried. "Am I burning you?" "A little, but I don't care." Jake squeezed her hand gently. "You're worth a little discomfort, though I might need to develop some calluses if we keep doing this." Vera laughed, and then suddenly she wasn't laughing anymore. She was crying. Hot tears rolled down her red cheeks. "I am sorry. I do not mean to—" "Hey, it's okay." Jake moved closer, wrapping his arms around her as much as he could reach. "Crying is good. It means you're feeling things. That's healthy." Vera buried her face against his shoulder, careful not to crush him. She cried for all the lonely years, for all the times she had felt like a monster instead of a person, for all the relationships she had never been allowed to have, and Jake held her through it all, unbothered by the heat, steady and strong despite being so much smaller. When she finally stopped crying, Jake pulled back and looked up at her. "Feel better?" "Yes, thank you." "Anytime." Jake wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. "So, I have a question. And you can tell me if I'm way out of line here, but I have to ask." "What is it?" "What if someone didn't care about your planet's trials? What if someone thought the whole system was outdated and dumb? What if someone wanted to just spend time with you, get to know you better, see where things go?" Vara's heart started beating faster. "Are you saying—" "I'm saying I like you, Vara. More than like you, actually. I think you're amazing and strong and beautiful. And I want to see if this thing between us could be something real. If you want that, too. Beautiful." No one had ever called her beautiful before. Powerful, yes. Dangerous, certainly. But never beautiful. "I want that," Vara whispered. "But my people's traditions—" "Your people aren't here right now. We are." Jake smiled. "And I've never been very good at following rules anyway." Vera made a decision. She had spent her whole life following rules, being proper, making herself smaller and quieter for others' comfort. But Jake had taught her something important. She didn't have to be small. She could be exactly who she was. She leaned down, moving slowly, giving him time to pull away if he wanted. But Jake didn't pull away. He met her halfway. The kiss was gentle, careful. Vara was terrified of hurting him with her heat or her strength. But Jake's hands came up to cup her face, and he kissed her back with confidence and warmth. When they finally parted, both of them were smiling. "You're really warm," Jake said, his voice slightly breathless. "It's nice, like kissing a really attractive furnace." Vera laughed, truly laughed, and pulled him close again. Outside the window, stars shone in the darkness. Inside, two very different people found something they had both been missing: hope, connection, love. The peace summit was ending. Treaties had been signed, agreements had been reached, and the Galactic Coalition was stronger than it had ever been. But there was one problem that no treaty could solve: Vara and Jake. The Kethrin delegation had noticed their princess spending time with the human. At first, they dismissed it as simple friendship, an alliance formed during the bombing crisis. But then reports came in. They were seen holding hands. Someone claimed to have witnessed them kissing in the observation deck. Advisor Zek called for a private meeting with Vara. "Princess, the delegation is concerned," Zek said carefully. "This human, Lieutenant Martinez, your relationship with him is becoming inappropriate by our standards. The other males of our species are offended. How can they attempt the trials if you have already chosen someone who has not earned the right?" Vara stood tall, her full height towering over Zek. "Jake has earned every right. He fought beside me. He saved lives. He treats me with respect and kindness. What more must he earn?" "The trials, Princess. You know our traditions. Any male who wishes to court royalty must complete the sacred trials. To do otherwise would dishonor your family, your position, and our entire culture." Vara wanted to argue, to say that the traditions were wrong. But she also understood that traditions mattered to her people. She couldn't simply throw away thousands of years of culture because she had fallen in love with a human. "What if Jake attempted the trials?" she asked quietly. Zek looked shocked. "A human? Princess, no outsider has ever attempted the trials. They are designed for Kethrins. The heat alone would kill most species. The strength requirements are impossible for someone his size." "But if he succeeded? Would that satisfy tradition?" "If he could complete even half the trials, it would be unprecedented. Yes, that would satisfy tradition. But, Princess, he cannot possibly succeed. It would be cruel to even allow him to try." Vera made her decision. "That will be his choice to make, not yours." When she told Jake about the trials, he listened quietly. She explained each test in detail. The heat endurance, where contestants sat in chambers heated to temperatures that would melt most metals. The strength trial, lifting progressively heavier stones. The combat trial, facing Kethrin warriors in hand-to-hand combat. The endurance run across terrain that simulated Kethrin volcanic plains. And finally, the trial of will, where contestants had to hold position under increasingly difficult conditions until only one remained. "No one expects you to do this," Vera said. "My people's traditions are not your responsibility. We can continue our relationship quietly, or we can wait until after I return home to—" "I'll do it," Jake said. "Jake, you could die. The heat alone." "I'll do it," he repeated, taking her hand. Not because I think the tradition is right. Honestly, I think it's kind of dumb that you need all this just to date someone. But I respect that it matters to you and your people. And if doing this means we can be together openly, without shame or hiding, then I want to try. Vera felt tears threatening again. You are the bravest, most foolish man I have ever met. Yeah, I get that a lot. The trials were scheduled for the final day of the summit. Word spread quickly. Delegates from every species gathered to watch. Many came out of curiosity, wanting to see if the small human would even survive the first test. Some came to support Jake. Others came to watch the Kethrans maintain their tradition. Jake stood in the preparation chamber wearing the traditional trial clothing, minimal protection against the heat. Around him, 3 Kethran males who were also attempting the trials looked at him with confusion and barely hidden contempt. You should withdraw, human, one of them said. This is not for outsiders. You will embarrass yourself and the princess. Jake just smiled. Thanks for the concern, but I'm good. The first trial was heat endurance. Contestants entered chambers that grew hotter every minute. Most species would pass out within seconds. Kethrans could last for hours. Jake entered his chamber. The heat hit him like a physical force. Sweat immediately poured down his body. His lungs burned with each breath. But he had trained for this, studying human endurance records, learning breathing techniques, preparing his body as much as possible. He lasted 43 minutes before medical sensors forced him out for safety. It wasn't as long as the Kethran contestants, but it was far longer than anyone expected. The crowd murmured in surprise. The strength trial came next. Jake couldn't lift the heaviest stones that the Kethrans managed. His body simply wasn't built for that level of raw power, but he used technique, leverage, and sheer determination to move stones that should have been impossible for someone his size. He completed the trial with barely passing marks. The combat trial was where Jake surprised everyone. Yes, the Kethran warriors were stronger, but Jake was faster, more creative, and absolutely refused to give up. He used every dirty trick he knew, every technique from human combat training. He lost more fights than he won, but he won enough to meet the minimum requirement. The endurance run nearly killed him. The volcanic terrain simulation was brutal, heat coming from below while obstacles blocked the path. Jake's legs felt like they were on fire, his vision blurred, but he kept moving, one foot in front of the other, drawing on reserves of stubbornness he didn't know he had. When he crossed the finish line, he collapsed immediately. Medics rushed forward, but he waved them off. I'm good, he gasped. One more trial. The final trial was the trial of will. All remaining contestants stood in a heat chamber while the temperature slowly increased. The last one standing won. It was less about physical strength and more about mental determination, the refusal to quit. 4 contestants remained. 3 Kethrans and 1 human. The temperature rose, and rose, and rose. Jake's skin felt like it was cooking. Every instinct screamed at him to leave, to save himself. He watched the other contestants, seeing their superior heat resistance, knowing he couldn't outlast them physically. But Jake had something the others didn't. He had a reason to stay that went beyond pride or tradition. Every time he thought about giving up, he thought about Vara, about her smile, her laugh, the way she had cried in his arms, about spending more time with her openly and without shame. One Kethran fell, then another. Jake and 1 final contestant remained. The temperature reached levels that should have killed Jake 10 minutes ago. His vision was going dark, his body was shutting down, but he refused to fall, not when he was this close. The final Kethran contestant looked at Jake with something like respect, then collapsed. Jake stood alone for 3 more seconds before his legs gave out. Medics swarmed him, cooling his body, checking vital signs. He was alive, barely, but he had done it. He had completed the trials. When he woke up in the medical bay, Vara was sitting beside him. She was holding his hand, crying and laughing at the same time. "You fool," she said, her voice full of love. "You beautiful, brave, impossible fool." Jake smiled weakly. "Did I pass?" "You did more than pass. You achieved what no outsider has ever achieved. My people are calling it a miracle." Vara leaned down and kissed his forehead gently. "But you never had to prove anything to me. I already knew who you were." "I know," Jake said. "But now everyone else knows too. Now we can be together without any doubts." The summit ended with a new announcement. Princess Vera of the Kethran Empire and Lieutenant Jake Martinez of Earth would serve as joint liaisons between their species. They would work together officially and openly, building bridges between two very different cultures. As their ship prepared to depart for their first joint assignment, Jake looked at Vara and grinned. The same grin he had given her on that first night when everyone else had been too afraid to approach. "So, what made you come talk to me that first night?" Vara asked. "When the glasses broke and everyone was staring. What made you different?" Jake thought about it for a moment. "You looked lonely, and I figured anyone who could make that many diplomats nervous just by walking into a room had to be interesting. Turns out I was right." Vara laughed and pulled him close, careful of his still healing body. "And I figured any human foolish enough to approach me might be worth knowing. I was right too." Outside their window, stars stretched into infinity. Two very different people from two very different worlds, choosing each other despite every obstacle, proving that sometimes the best solution to impossible problems was the simplest one. Treat everyone like a person, face challenges with a grin, and never let fear decide who you talk to. That was the human way, and it had changed everything.